Chapter 20. At morning tea, James walked over. "Mac, sorry to dump this problem onto everything else you've got, but I don't think my team are going to get today's jobs finished. Everything I try to organise runs into obstacles. I don't know how to..." He shrugged helplessly. Mac sat down, putting down the chisel he'd been sharpening. "Spell it out for me." "Okay, it isn't only my team, it's all of the skilled men. Our specialists, if you like. They're being wasted. They're spending too much time doing their own donkey work. You know, carrying tools up and down ladders, replacing blunt or broken tools, making cement. You get the idea." "Yeah, I see the problem." Mac stroked his chin, leaving 2 smudges of oil from the oil stone. "If I assigned them each an assistant, a dog's body, to do all the grunt work, would that swing it?" "Almost certainly. Can you free anybody up to do that?" "I've got an idea, but I can't do all the pushing. To get work out of them, some of them, you know, them that aren't self-starters, those skilled guys will need to do that themselves." "I can already imagine who you're thinking of." "The ones who need helpers, are they Tomo, James, Bindi and Cynthia, you and Alex?" "Yeah, and yourself, Half Screw, and maybe Colin." "Forget Colin." Mac rolled his eyes. "As for Half Screw, you mean when he's building walls and fixing engines? He's got an apprentice for hunting already. Lenny does that." "True. Like Carol assists Tomo on the days he hunts. But it's not as simple as that. There are some jobs they need an oppo for, and others they don't, like when Half Screw put in that cold water tank in the loft. He said he had to stop work to find someone when he needed a light shining, or to hold beams in place for fixing." "Yeah, I know," Mac agreed. "Same as with that wood-burning stove I put into the other side of the dining room. There were times I needed a lift or some cement already mixed. Most of the time I was okay on my own." He picked up the chisel and stood up. "All right, I'll set it up. I dare say it'll need some fine-tuning, but we'll give everybody a dog's body for a morning, afternoon or evening, so they can plan their days better." He walked over to where Bindi was working with Anna, moving the toilet hut and bench to its next spot, and led her a few paces from Anna. "What kind of worker is Anna?" he asked. "She's all right. Not much initiative, but she pulls her weight. You know..." Bindi stopped to think. "Nah, actually she's pretty good. Nothing's too much trouble for her. She usually carries my tools back and cleans them if they're messy." "Is there a different helper you'd prefer? Not bloody Pet or Ashanti, if that's who you're trying to palm off on me. Nor Julie. Cynthia curses black and blue about her." "Well, sometimes she does," she said, noting Mac's interested look. "Let me see. I haven't worked with everyone, but Maria's pretty good. Linda's good with some jobs, but not everything. Oh yes, Lenny, he's a good worker too. But you're probably thinking about him being in charge soon." "No, it's too soon for him. He still needs to learn from the experienced ones." Bindi leaned on her spade. "What's this about, Mac?" "Pet and Ashanti have been worse than useless setting up the workshop and mending the broken tools. The men have been grumbling about it since I gave them the job. Too much work is held up, waiting for tools that never get mended. I need someone capable to take it over." "But I've already got responsibility for the outside dunnies, looking after the sheep, keeping the firewood and gas bottles for Joan's oven topped up," Bindi protested. "And once the boys have taught me how to work the fishing nets, that's going to be our job too. I just can't." "I'm sorry," she lamented, her hands wide in apology. "Oh, I didn't mention finding out about the solar panels and how to set them up, and..." Mac held up a hand. "I didn't realise some of those jobs were yours," he began. "You didn't give them to us. We just saw they needed doing," Bindi said, nodding at Anna to include her. Mac outlined his plan for better distributing the farm's workload. "In that case, I think we could handle the workshop and those other things you said, Bindi said brightly. The workload, that is. But she looked over at Anna, who moved to join them, don't know what to do with all the tools. Not like you guys do. We can learn, Anna said, walking over. We're not helpless. Give us a few hours of teaching once in a while, then we're as good as you. Not weak and feeble women, then? Eh? They both asked, looking bemused. Never mind. English History GCE is settled then. Give me 5 minutes start to break the news, and you can start right away. You what? Ashanti demanded. You're taking us off it and replacing us with men, I suppose. Strike another blow for the patriarchy, pet. Look, I'm sorry, Max said, but it's not working out, is it? I mean, you're not mending the tools that the skilled workers need, are you? Not all of them, no, Ashanti conceded reluctantly, but we need more time. And more help, Pet added. Look, we'll give this new plan a try, Mac appeased. And who knows, in a few weeks... He paused as Bindi and Anna walked in. Are you two slackers still here? Bindi said, looking around the workshop and curling her lip. Ashanti and Pet took a step back, trying to make sense of who was replacing them. So we have to clean the toilets now, Ashanti recovered, while these two take over after all our hard work. I'm not seeing a lot of hard work, Bindi remarked, looking around the half-completed workbench and boxes of tools strewn around the floor and up the back wall. How about you, Anna? Half a job done, Anna commented, from half a woman. She threw a dismissive look at Pet. Leave it with us, Mac, and we'll show you what we can do. She lifted her head to look up at Mac with big smiling eyes. Mac looked from one pair to the other and nodded decisively. Yep, I got this one right. He turned to Ashanti and Pet. Cleaning the toilets is a fraction of your new jobs. Digging the holes for the next ones and moving the huts and benches over them will keep you busy. Indignant noises exploded from the two women. Digging? I'll talk to you later about all your new responsibilities, once I've figured them out. But for now, you're going to be a fetching and carrying assistant for one of the men. You'll either be helping them build a wall or doing some repairs on the roof. I'll tell you which man at morning tea. But for now, make sure Joan's got enough firewood and take her another calabash gas bottle for the stove. One of those enormous gas bottles, Pet objected, horrified. They're taller than me. I can't possibly... See that trolley there? Bindi pointed to the corner of the workshop. You can borrow that from our workshop, but bring it right back. Chapter 21. We're not going to be short of fuel and power for quite a while, Tomo said to Mac later that afternoon, as they rolled the final barrel of diesel onto the hardcore base. They'd built it underneath a canvas canopy outside the manor house wall. Mac, Tomo, hissed Bindi, appearing through the trees, her finger to her lips. They turned to listen as she came close, speaking under her breath. Listen, there's a wild pig in the woods. Nicola spotted it while she was looking for fungi with that book Ellen found in the farmhouse. I figured you'd want to know. You figured right. What a stroke of luck, Mac replied. If we could catch it, and it turned out to be pregnant, that would be brilliant. If not, we could shoot it. Mac, we should shoot this one. Maybe think about trapping the next one, Tomo said. Yeah, Bindi agreed. A pig in the hand is worth two in the bush, you know. Go get the rifle, Tomo, Mac said, passing him the key lanyard from around his neck. I'd sooner catch it, but if I can't, you can shoot it if it looks like getting away. Bindi, come with me to the workshop. We've got ropes there. No, even better, go to the compost heap instead. Get some potato peelings and that sort of thing. They both arrived at the same time where the pig was grubbing. Mac with a skein of rope and Bindi with a hatful of carrot tops and potato peelings. How are we going to do this? Bindi asked. Try and entice it into the compound. If we can get it locked up in there, We can figure out what to do next." The news of the pig had spread, and a small group had gathered to watch. Bindi was leaving a trail of food that it had begun to follow. "Can we help?" Anna and Maria asked. "Just be ready," Mac answered. "If it won't go through the gate, we'll try to grab it and tie its legs." "Oh," Anna sounded doubtful. "Don't they bite?" "I hadn't thought of that," Mac confessed. "I was thinking we'd try and tie its back legs together. I saw it on TV." "On TV?" Anna repeated. "Not in real life?" "Yeah," Mac continued less confidently. "You make a loop with the rope, and when it steps into it, you pull it tight." "Sounds like something we need to practice first," Anna advised. "You might just have to try it without any practice, Mac," Bindi interrupted. "It's not going through the gate." The pig was about 6 feet from the gate, but ignoring the peelings placed just beyond it. "Can it see them?" Mac asked. "Yep," Bindi confirmed. "I put them there when it was watching." The pig looked around and sniffed, but moved no further towards where they wanted it. It slowly began walking away from the gate, toward the tree it had been grubbing around earlier. "Quick, do something," hissed Anna. "He's getting away." "Bindi, get in front of it and put all those peelings down. Just hold it up a bit." While she did that, Mac came up behind the distracted animal and grabbed its back legs. The pig squealed and struggled, but Mac held on. "I can't hold it and get the rope round its legs," Mac panted. He looked around the group. "Colin, come and help me," he shouted, his feet spread wide as he was dragged through the leaves and soil. "What? Are you kidding? What about my back? It's only been 2 weeks since—" "Never mind your blasted back. Come and grab its front legs, or it'll break away from me." When Colin didn't move, Bindi hesitantly stepped forward. She took hold of one of the pig's front legs and pulled in order to topple it. The pig's squeals became ear-splitting. As she pulled harder, the leg slipped through her hands and she fell backwards. The pig redoubled its frantic efforts to escape. "Quickly," Mac shouted over the din. "I can't hold it any longer. Bring that bloody rope and tie it up." The pig pulled one leg free. Mac now held just one leg with both hands. "I'm losing it. If someone doesn't—" Tomo appeared from behind Mac's right shoulder, placed the rifle against the pig's ear and fired. The pig dropped to the ground, and silence replaced the intense struggle and squealing a moment earlier. Mac let the legs go and bent over, sucking in great lungfuls of air. Mac and Tomo sat opposite one another at the dining room table. The April evening had become night, and by lamplight they studied a map open in front of them. "Mac, you know that day you shot Ricky?" Tomo opened tentatively. "And, he'd been out hunting, along with Half-Screw and me. After another delicious meal, another of Joan's signature dishes, venison casserole with field mushrooms and spring vegetables from Alex's garden, everyone else had gone upstairs. The house was settling down for the night. Yeah, of course, I'll never forget it. That morning felt like it lasted for a week. I'd never have even gone if Ricky hadn't made me. And I'd have never..." Tomo looked up as the door opened and Maria and Anna walked in. They were both dressed attractively with discreet makeup and a lot of skin showing. Maria carried a demijohn of homebrew and a handful of glasses. Mac and Tomo exchanged glances of the kind that said, "What's going on here?" "Not interrupting anything, are we?" Maria asked. "Is it a secret meeting?" "Not secret at all," Mac replied. "Sit down and we'll show you what we're doing." He pulled over the hurricane lamp so the girls could see the map spread out on the table. As they moved closer, Mac noted more than a hint of perfume in the air. "Look over here," he began, pointing to a spot on the map. "This is our manor house." "Hold your horses a minute," Maria interrupted. "What do you boys think of our latest batch?" she said, pouring out 4 glasses. "Cheers," she said, draining a glass and shuffling along the bench until she was up tight against Mac's thigh. He noticed a similar thing happening on Tomo's side of the table. "Carry on then. So this here is our house, right?" She pointed on the map. "That's right. We were looking at how far we've explored in each direction and wondering where the next settlement might be." "Sounds thrilling. So this is what you two do together in the dark," Anna teased. "The next settlement?" Maria asked, throwing her a look. "Do we really need to find another one? Won't the Danes be enough?" "Who knows if they will. Best not to have all our eggs in one basket." "Basket? Eggs?" Maria asked. "What are you on about?" "I mean, we can never have enough neighbours." "But we don't even know if there's another soul for many miles," Mac explained. "Or if there is, whether they're friendly or not," Tomo added. Maria replied, looking straight at Mac. Peripherally, he saw Anna giving Tomo the same treatment. The room was silent, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. Tomo blinked first. "You two look sharp. Are you going out on the town later?" he joked. Maria looked over at Anna before answering. "Yeah, we're going to a West End show." She leaned in towards Mac, her pupils wide, and drew in a deep breath. "Actually, the best party around is right here. It's where the 2 best-looking men by miles are." She spoke, looking into Mac's eyes, then lowered them submissively to the table, before cocking her head at Anna as if to say, "Come on, back me up." Anna, along with Maria, was Polish. She normally wore her straight dark hair long, but tonight it was pinned up, with just a few strands dangling strategically down by her cheeks. She had the classic Slavic nose and piercing blue eyes. Mac had never noticed how expressive they were before, hinting at depths of giving and generosity. She lifted her glass to her lips and took a sip. "Na zdrowie," she breathed seductively, her tongue rolling over the consonants in a drawn-out trill. Mac stood up slowly and lifted one leg over the bench. "Where you going?" Anna and Maria asked together, a touch of panic, laced with disappointment in their voices. "Going nowhere," said Mac, sitting down again, straddling the bench, now facing Maria. He reached out and cupped the side of her face with his palm, sliding his hand down her hair. Transfixing her intensely with his eyes, he pulled her head toward him for a long, slow kiss. "Wow!" Maria drew a deep breath. "Ali wasn't kidding. You're a great kisser." "Ali's been telling tales out of school then," Mac countered. "Making us single girls jealous and horny is what she's gone and done," Maria said. "And we want to fix that right now. Don't we, Anna?" "Right now," confirmed Anna. She drew herself up and leant over Tomo, pressing herself into his chest and face before turning down the hurricane lamp. Chapter 22. Mac, Tomo and James opened the gate and wheeled their mountain bikes into the Danes' yard. They knew they'd been spotted from the farmhouse while they were riding down the footpath. Simon appeared from a doorway in the courtyard wall. "Look, he's got Paddy's bow. I knew it was him that killed Paddy." He raced across the yard and caught Mac with 2 punches to the face that got past Mac's forearm guard and knocked him over. He took aim at Mac's ribs with a wild kick, which Mac rolled away from, quickly getting to his feet and taking a defensive stance. He could feel blood running down from the corner of his mouth and eyebrow. As Mac was getting up, Tomo ran in behind Simon and collapsed the back of his knee with his heel. Simon fell onto his belly at the same moment. Tomo pointed the shotgun at him and placed his boot in the middle of his back. "Stay down, twat." James stepped forwards and scanned the semicircle of the yard with his rifle. The few men and women who'd arrived in response to the noise took steps back but didn't react. Mac wiped away the blood with the back of his hand. He wasn't armed except for the bow and his knife belt. "Stay sharp," he shouted to James and Tomo. "We'll wait. Remember, we have a truce. This dickhead must have forgotten." They stood in a defensive arc, Simon still on the cobbled concrete, his head craning round to stare angrily at Mac. Gary and two men ran into the yard from around the back of a row of outbuildings. All three were wearing dirty overalls and wiping oily hands on a rag they passed to each other. They weren't armed. A small group followed them, pointing at the scene and muttering. "What's happening here?" Gary demanded. The two other men fanned out to either side of him. "Call off your dog, Gary," Mac told him. "He just attacked me out of the blue. You know we've got a truce, don't you? We're meant to be at peace." Yes, we do." He looked at Simon and the guns held by James and Tomo. "Simon, get up and come over here. Is this true?" Simon rolled onto his side and stood up, dusting himself down. He limped back to Gary's side, cursing, favouring his right knee. Gary repeated his question, but Simon just looked at the ground. "I guess it's true then," Gary said angrily. "Get out of here." Simon shot Mac a malevolent look and hobbled out of the yard. Tomo broke his shotgun, and James shouldered the rifle. A door slammed in the direction Simon had left, and half a dozen pigeons flew into the air. "I don't know what to say, Mac," Gary began. "Are you all right?" "Let me get one of the girls to clean you up." "Hang on," Mac interrupted. "First things first. Where's that idiot gone? He's mad enough to take a pot shot at us. Two of our girls are coming to join us in a few minutes." Gary's face briefly showed confusion. What would he... Go and check that out, will you, Daz?" One of his men left through the same exit as Simon. "Can this be sorted out over a pot of tea?" Gary asked Mac. "I'm serious about this truce. I don't want Simon's temper to upskittle it." When Mac agreed, Gary shouted for one of the women to bring a tray of tea and mugs. "We'll have it in the sunny corner of the courtyard," he called out. "Follow me," he told the men. Short time later, the tea arrived and was poured by a skinny blonde woman who introduced herself as Alice. James took a swallow from his mug and pulled a face. "What's in this?" "We make it from acorns," Alice said. "We ran out of tea and coffee." They were sitting around a picnic table on a patio at the front of the farmhouse. The late afternoon spring sunshine bounced back from the red brick walls, bathing everyone in its warmth. The light breeze tugged at Mac's curls. Peace and calm seemed to emanate from the patio. Kitchen sounds spilled out of a nearby window. Daz came back and announced that Simon had cooled off and someone was sitting with him, so he'd cool down some more. A second Dane woman brought out a plate of bread and dripping, placing it by the teapot. She was petite and had thick, unruly black hair which tumbled around her Celtic features. The effect was to make her pixie-like and mysterious. Mac wondered whether it was accidental, or had some frantic stagecraft been happening just before her entrance. She gave a beaming smile to Tomo. "Hi there, handsome." "Hey, how do you make bread?" Mac asked. "In the normal way," she answered, "making flour from wheat." "We took over several fields of wheat when we found this place," Des explained. "Yep, we'll show you the place later," Gary added. He turned to Mac. "You talked about trading with us in that first note." Yeah, I did, but I hadn't really..." "Were you thinking about skills? Or food, maybe? Or weapons, or ammo? I'd have to talk to everybody first, you understand. But we don't have much of those things. We've got quite a lot of petrol. Calagas and diesel. Do you have a generator? We've even got a working spare, another man said. He was small and wiry. An unkempt moustache and overbite made him look rat-like. He wore knee-length shorts, work boots and a T-shirt with writing too faded to read. Chris was a car mechanic before, Gary said. Still am, Chris corrected. But fuel's a bit thin on the ground, or we'd run the minibus and Land Rover more. Same goes for the chainsaws. We'll trade you fuel if you see anything you... And guns, Gary interrupted. Do you have any spare guns and shells to spare? Let's get to know each other a bit better before we think that, Mac said. I'm not asking you for sex, man, Gary shot back, laughing. Get to know you better before we go any further. He nudged Chris. You don't hear that one from women anymore, do you? He snorted. Yep. Well, we've broken the ice today, Ali broke in, and that's why we came over. Come on, she gestured to the men. Let's go before we're walking back in the dark. Hold on, Ali, Mac said. We still have some ideas for stuff we want to trade for, and we haven't had a good look around the farm yet. That would probably give us a better idea of what they might want from us. All right. While you men do your horse trading, me and Ellen will go and chat with these girls, and they can show us around. Sure, Gary agreed, and gestured at the pixie girl who led them away. How many men have you got at your place? They heard her ask before Gary returned to the subject of trading. As the afternoon shadows from the woods played over the wheat fields, the pixie girl, who introduced herself as Gypsy, showed the three men around the farm. This is my second tour today, she laughed nervously. You will tell him I did a good job, won't you? You know what? She chattered rapidly, filling any gaps of silence. I heard you chatting earlier, and you called us the Danes. Is that right? Mac nodded. Where did that come from? Gypsy asked. From Danebridge, the village at the bottom of our farm track. The Danebridge Danes, James explained. Ah, yes, I see. You thought we came from Danebridge. Oh, I don't know what we thought. Just a name that stuck. Do you know what we called you? Lots of things, probably. The thieving bastards? Definitely. Many times, she agreed, laughing. And the plucking pheasant pluckers. But mainly the toffs. All three men cracked up laughing. The toffs, spluttered James. Yeah, I figured it was because of that posh stately home you live in. Max shook his head, still chuckling. Yeah, well, now you've met us, you'll have to think of a new one. The tramps? The down and outs. You've got to be kidding. Down and outs? Gypsy turned to them and opened her palms wide, a bemused look on her face. Is that how you see yourselves? No way. You're survivors. You're going to make it. As they walked around the farm, Gypsy showed them projects they were proud of. Many were unfinished, a few in the final stages of development. Mac found himself especially interested in the polytunnels, which had tomatoes and sweet corn already growing, as well as many other vegetable seedlings and baby plants. The farm also had a stream running between the fields. It was on the far side of the inner courtyard, edging round one of the wheat fields, before descending into the woodland beyond. The stream continued south and ran parallel with Cranberry Clough Lane, which joined the two farms. Sounds of chopping and sawing came from the woods. The men watched as the woman who'd served them tea and cake carried a tray with mugs and a teapot on it towards the sounds. The petite girl pointed to the stream. The guys have caught eels at night from it, but no fish so far. They continued the tour as the shadows from the farmhouse began to lengthen to the edge of the fields. Entering an old cowshed, Gypsy ushered them in with a circus bow. Is that a cow? James spluttered. A bullock. We're not quite sure what to do with him. Obviously, we could kill and butcher him and eat like lords. Now we're trading with you, we could sell you some. Yes, do it, urged James and Tomo. But some of us keep hoping a cow has survived somewhere. What a difference that would make. Calves, milk, butter, cheese, continued James, yoghurt, raspberry milkshakes, chocolate ice cream, mocked Tomo, quark. Getting a bit carried away, aren't you? Piss taker, James spluttered, embarrassed, and they all laughed. He isn't really earning his keep yet, Gypsy pointed to the animal, a boisterous Hereford, although we did plough those 2 fields that we planted this year's wheat in. If you do slaughter him, we could all have a barbecue and get to know each other, Max suggested. We've got a right little cottage industry going. Brewing beer and wine, we could bring that as our contribution. They shared a few more ideas about projects before turning back toward the Dane farmhouse. We want to get back before dusk, Max said. We'll go and pick the girls up and get going. Chapter 23. Your girl has the sexiest wiggle when she walks, Mac, James said. The 2 girls had dismounted from their bikes to push them over the muddiest section of the farm track. The men had hung back to review what they'd agreed with the Danes. I'll make sure and tell her who her secret Valentine card came from, Mac returned. Ha ha. Anyway, I think the Danes got the better deal today. Oh, I don't know, Mac replied. A straight swap for an afternoon's work from half-screw repairing their guns for their mechanic working on the vehicles that are too hard for us. And the right to drive down Cranberry Clough Lane through our front yard to get to the main road, added Tomo, once they've traded for some of our petrol. What else do we have to barter? James asked. Brewing? Winemaking? What about cheese making? Yeah, maybe, but they're just nice-to-haves, not essentials. They won't swap what we really need from them for our luxuries. I was hoping for some of their spuds and wheat, but Gary insisted we trade guns and ammo for them. I just thought of something, James chipped in. We've got a medic, haven't we? When little Nicola was poorly, Linda checked her out and gave her the right tablets. She used to be a nurse. That's probably the closest thing to a doctor we'll get. That's an idea, James, Max said. We'll have a word with Linda when we get back. I wonder what kind of nurse she was. Now we've seen their farm, I think they're doing better than we are, James said. We didn't know much about what they had before we visited. We'd have definitely robbed their wheat fields and polytunnels if we'd known about them. Max shook his head. They would have reaped that wheat before we even arrived. We shoot more game than they do, but otherwise they beat us hands down for food, James continued. I mean, they have wheat, chickens and pheasants, 1 or 2 geese, all those veggies in the polytunnels, you know. You saw the food they made. Bread, cakes, they're definitely doing better than we are. I don't see how they beat us hands down, James, Mac replied. We've got our flock of sheep, and we've shot some deer and wild pigs, and geese and rabbits. We used to go hungry for days before, but when did that last happen? James replied. Even so, I'm not so sure we're matching them. Mind you, we've got fishing, which they haven't, I suppose. Anyway, didn't you notice how skinny they all were? Tomo joined in. I like curves on my women, he laughed. Not having to worry I'd snap them in half. Quark, interjected James. What's quark? Oh, yeah, it's cheese. Before you ask, it's in a Hawkwind song, and I've never had any. Max cycled home thoughtfully. The visit had left him with more ideas than he had manpower or resources for. He'd quizzed Gary about how his polytunnels had been constructed, and whether he'd provide help and advice for them to build their own. They had most of the materials either at the workshop or the derelict farms they'd scouted. On top of that, there was enough pasture and fields to grow, far more than Alex's small vegetable garden. But wasn't arable farming really labour-intensive? And they had neither tractors nor farm machinery. The following morning, before breakfast, Mac was sitting at the dining table with a drink of hot fruit tea. Through the fogged-up window panes, he could see the drizzle outside. Occasional drips rolled down them. He, James, and the other work team leaders were planning the coming day's tasks around the weather when Linda approached them and sat down. Half-Screw and Alex were already out hunting, teaching Lenny and Carol. "We need a clinic or a surgery or something like it," she began. "I brought it up with Ricky when we had that spell when everybody was either throwing up everywhere. But he wouldn't listen." "Not just spewing up either," James interrupted. "I was leaking out of both ends." "That's right," Linda confirmed. "Everybody was. Diarrhea and vomiting. Not surprisingly, with the disgusting state of the toilets and everything else." "Ugh," Ashanti complained. "I'm trying to eat." "So that's why you organised a cleaning roster for the toilets and bathrooms," Tomo said, ignoring her, "and had the toilets moved outdoors." Linda nodded. "Ricky said if we had a clinic, people would pretend to be sick and swing the lead. You couldn't argue with him without getting a smack, so that was that." "Have you got something in mind?" Mac asked. "Two things, actually. One is overdue already. That's a clean room set aside for a clinic or first aid room. There's a downstairs bedroom that doesn't get slept in much, up Ricky's old corridor. It's big enough. If I could have some of the guys for an afternoon after I've cleaned it up, they could put in some cabinets. And perhaps you could build me an examination couch or bed." "Good idea. Get started as soon as you can. Go to James when you need men freeing up to help you." "And the other thing?" "We barely have any medicines, and the other things we need in a clinic, like bandages and dressings. And thermometers, a stethoscope, and a sphig, a blood pressure machine. I can write you a list, but someone would have to go into Lancaster, or at least the nearest GP surgery." "Why does it have to be the men?" Ashanti complained. Ashanti had always been vague about her previous job. Some of the women thought she'd been a social worker. Others said she just tried to sound like one, but had only worked in the social workers' offices. "It's always the men get to do the interesting jobs. I bet we could make some cabinets and a bed just as good as them. Sexist pigs, that's what you are." Mac and Linda stared at her. "You what, Ashanti?" Mac replied. "Have you ever done any carpentry then?" "No," she countered, "but that's not the point." "Isn't it?" "Of course not. You just assumed we women wouldn't be able. How many of the men were carpenters before, eh?" "None of them," Mac admitted. "And none were mechanics or hunters either. But they did those jobs when we needed them doing." "Well, we should be given a chance, same as the men," Ashanti insisted. "You had a chance, remember, with Pet, and you couldn't get that workshop running. I should have another chance to prove myself, with a different partner." "You'd say yes right away if I was a man." "I suppose," Max said doubtfully. "Who would you partner up with?" "Another woman, Mandeep maybe, or Cynthia." "How long do you think you'd need away from your assistant job?" Linda huffed impatiently, and Mac turned to her. "What do you think, Linda? Any objections to Ashanti building the clinic?" "No, thanks," Linda replied firmly. "I don't want patients on collapsing beds." Mid-morning, the rain that had been steadily falling before dawn increased its efforts with a vengeance. Someone suggested an early morning tea break, and everyone rushed into the kitchen. "You're dripping all over my clean floor," Joan shouted at them. "Go and remove your wet things in the hallway." They returned a few minutes later. "The kettle's on," Joan said, "but there are no drop scones until lunchtime." As they sat down, Pascal said, "I have to pinch myself when I think about how far we have come since Ricky was his boss. I was hungry most of the time. Now we are..." She paused. "Only hungry some of the time," James interrupted, making everyone laugh. "Yes, of course, but that isn't very often. And we are finding more food all the time. N'est-ce pas, Mac?" I'm not so sure about that," Mac answered hesitantly. "You are not serious. I'm not being negative, Pascal, but we still don't have so many things we need long term. More people who know about farming and animals. We don't have a long-term food supply. If we had as many people as the Danes, we could use all those extra fields that are sitting idle, he gestured at the window in their general direction, for crops and animals. Mac took a breath, about to list more, but Pascal interrupted. You are being negative and unrealistic. We are doing magnifique. You must have dreams of the Swiss Family Robinson story, or those James Herriot books. They are romantic fiction, not real life. Dead right, James agreed. Mac, you can't go on like this in front of the others. I mean, it's all right with just us, he gestured around the room. Gathered around the kitchen range with Mac were James and Jessie, Joan, Ali and Pascal, Ellen and Tomo. You've got to have some people you can be honest in front of. We get that. But the others can't hear you talking like this. There's such a positive spirit out there, half-screw accepted. You'll ruin that if you keep on going on about how hopeless things are. Because things aren't hopeless at all, Mac, Ali added gently. Pascal's quite right, she paused, for once, pulling a face to show how the words tasted. We are doing brilliantly. We are well fed, whereas we were always hungry when Ricky was here. But don't you see? We haven't got any grain, Mac countered. We should be planting wheat within the month. And cows and pigs, we need them too, but we haven't seen any anywhere. Where will we get our protein from? And... Mac, slow down. Tomo joined in. Tomo rarely spoke during these informal meetings. He was Mac's right-hand man, just as he'd been Ricky's, but usually confined himself to supporting Mac. We do have protein, don't we? Those sheep, right? And chickens and eggs. Don't know if eggs are protein, he faltered. And don't forget, we know there's pheasants, deer and wild pigs out there. Me and Half-Screw have already started learning where they feed. Half-Screw's already out there now and teaching the youngsters. That was my idea, he added. A great idea, Tom, said Ellen, her eyes full of pride. There was silence. Mac steepled his hands in front of his chin, considering what he'd heard. I'm still not so sure, but I can see you've got more confidence than me. But I still can't relax until we've got, well, loads of things. No need for me to keep repeating them. And if you must know, Pascal, it was Terry Nation's survivors. The door opened, and Nicola walked in with a shoulder bag of foraged greenery. Joan opened it and separated the different plants. It's a blessing you showed this first to me, sweetie, she said to the girl. Look, that's hemlock. Poisonous. You must be able to tell chervil from hemlock. Look, here, at the stem. Do you see? She pointed out the differences, patiently, before placing a steaming teapot on the table. Mugs are where they usually live. Go and fetch your own, she told them. And if you don't believe we're moving in the right direction, Mac, think about how far we've come since we were living in Lancaster. Chapter 24. As the afternoon passed, the rain faded. Work parties moved out of the barns and workshops into the fields and woods. Mac took his tea break by walking around the farm, checking up on their progress, helping if they'd become stuck. Here comes the foreman, he heard Colin say. Quick, get back to work before he sees you slacking, he said, sitting on an upturned bucket. Mac ignored the comment and addressed Julie instead. How are you getting on? Do you need any help? We're doing all right, she answered shortly, not returning his gaze. Good. Any problems wheelbarrowing the logs across all this mud? Mac pointed at the muddy track to the barn, which had puddles and ruts. Yep, but we can manage, she answered, and moved away, picking up the chainsaw. Mac moved on to the next work party, having its tea break. Jessie was pretending to be a pig, stepping into a noose while James tried to pull the rope taut before she could escape. The rest of the group looked on laughing. The next group he came to were building a greenhouse they'd found on a scavenging trip. Over the past fortnight it had been dismantled and the pieces brought back to the manor house. Ali was in charge, and Maria and Anna were helping, as was Mandeep, who'd still been at college when the world ended. "Is this where you want it, Mac?" Ali asked, prompting ribald jokes from the others. Lenny walked across to them, Carol and Half-Screw following. "We're back from hunting, Mac," he said. "Half-Screw's going to show Carol how to butcher what we shot, but I'm free." "Are you free, Captain Peacock?" Mac said, in the campest affectation he could manage. Half-Screw rolled his eyes as he handed the guns to Mac and led Carol away. Dusk was less than half an hour away when Mac walked back around to Colin's work party. Julie and Bindi were sawing logs on a trestle, and Colin was splitting them with an axe. Mandeep was returning with an empty barrow. Mac noticed the pile of split logs was markedly smaller than the pile of sawn ones. "How you doing?" he asked. "Need any help?" "Ask Colin," Julie snapped. "He's supposed to be the leader." This prompted a snort and eye-rolling from Bindi. "Well?" Mac turned to Colin. "We'll have to knock off soon. My back is playing me up." Julie snorted. "Backbone, more like." "Have you seen Linda about it?" Mac asked sympathetically. "A while ago," Colin said, "but she couldn't do anything for me." "And what else have you been going on about today?" Julie said angrily. "Your feet, and what else? Was it a migraine?" "Or the menopause coming on," giggled Bindi. "I'm not used to physical labour," Colin sighed. "I used to work with my brain. Can't you find me an office job, Mac?" "I'd be so much more useful that way." "Much more useful than what exactly?" Julie rejoined bitterly. "There aren't any office jobs, Colin. This is it," Mac answered. "Get him to do some stock taking or marketing our services to other providers," Bindi called out, and they both laughed before starting to saw another log. Mac turned back to Colin to see him wiping down the axe head and putting on its cover. "I'll have to stop now. My osteopath told me not to strain myself." "Colin, I appreciate you're tired and your back hurts, but we really need this finishing before dark. Can't you just put up with the discomfort?" "Discomfort?" Colin retorted, his voice high with indignation. "Discomfort? I'm in agony, and you're making it worse," he added with a tone of finality. "Pain, yes, I should have said work through the pain. Sorry. Look, I just can't," Colin continued packing away, stuffing his work gloves into his duffel bag and turning back to walk back to the manor house. "I have to sit down when my back gets bad." "Forget it, Mac," Julie said witheringly. "He's a waste of time anyway. Me and Bindi will finish it. All right, girl?" She turned to the Australian. "Bloody men," she said dismissively, removing the axe sheath. Joan's reminder about Lancester had made Mac think back to the time they'd moved out to the manor house. Ricky had organised the whole move with Half-Screw. Tomo had come along later. They'd been living in a hotel on the outskirts of Lancester. Two larger groups had taken the town. There was a semi-truce with a natural boundary in the form of the railway line and A road running through the town. The hotel was in the town's southwestern corner, and so was in the larger group's territory. There'd been a few skirmishes, but no serious confrontations. One evening, a handful of men from the larger group had squared up to a smaller group of Rickies, bringing back a van load of food, booze and clothes. They'd demanded some bottles as tribute. Alex, the driver, had told the story afterwards. "I've been considering giving in to them, handing over a few bottles so they'd go away. But then one of the men said, 'And we'll take that tasty redhead and the foreign chick off your hands too.'" "Weak," Ricky had called out mockingly. "Give in once and they'll never stop coming and taking off you." "Yeah, all right, I figured that out when they demanded the girls," Alex had countered, holding a blood-spotted cloth to his nose. "So I told them to piss off. That's when they tried to help themselves from the back of the van." Mac had been too new within the group to speak up, but he could see that the men had merely been probing for any resistance to the idea of taking the women. They'd been much more interested in the visible drink. Alex described some pushing and shoving, then some punches and kicks delivered until there was a standoff. Ricky must have heard the shouting because he came out at that point, and the sight of him was enough to make the gang back down and walk away. Later, Ricky called a meeting and said they'd have to move and find another place. Even though they'd never scavenged from the town itself, which would have been a direct challenge, sooner or later one group would attack them and steal the women and anything else worth having, he said. There are a lot more of them than us, he'd said, and if they do it like I would, they'd easily beat us. The next day, just after dark, they drove away in the minibus and Land Rover they'd been discreetly filling all day. About 25 miles into the Mid-Wolds countryside, they spotted a large farmhouse and stayed for a week. A week later, someone found the manor house, and Ricky immediately spotted its defensive potential. At the time, Mac had expected defections to the town gangs, and had been surprised when there were none. He wondered why nobody, especially the women, had taken their chance and run away then. After all, he reasoned, Ricky hadn't become an intimidating dictator. After he'd arrived at the manor house, he'd been like that from the start. Then Mac realised what Ricky had provided the group with. Safety and security, something they couldn't have without his knowledge and leadership, brutal though it was. Ricky had foreseen the danger of attack and taken action, and that was why everyone had stayed with him. Even though they hated all his bullying, beggars couldn't be choosers. Mac saw he needed to be as strong on defence and security as Ricky, or he'd risk losing hearts and minds. And he'd remembered something else about Lancester. All the shops that might still have things they needed to survive and grow. That supper time he announced, "Let's have your shopping lists for things we're running short of. Tomorrow we're going back into town scavenging." Pascal sat down beside Mac as people left the dining room and moved into the warm common room, where hostelers used to relax, read, and tell stories about their adventures. Mac noticed Alex going upstairs for his guitar and Anna her flute. "Who will you be taking to Lancester tomorrow?" she asked. "And who will you be leaving behind?" "I suppose I'll take the men for lifting and dismantling things. I haven't really..." "What you should do is make it a day out, a day trip. That is how you say it, yes?" "But it's a work party," Mac replied with surprise. "It will be hard work, not a trip to the seaside." "You should make it both," Pascal said firmly. "It is a day away from this place for a start, and everybody enjoys something new. After the hard work, you should let everybody have some fun. I will think of something once we get there." "All right," Mac agreed doubtfully. "What did you mean about who to leave behind?" "Isn't it obvious?" She almost clapped his head with her flailing hand. Mac looked bewildered. "Which of us are the most valuable, the hardest workers, or the most skillful?" She fixed him with a riveting look. "And which ones are not, are none of those things?" "I don't like thinking that way about people," Mac answered. "Everybody has something to offer, different strengths and qualities." "That is all very fine if you are a social worker," Pascal snapped. "But it is of no use to us here. This is a life and death situation." "Life or death," she corrected herself. "Look at Julie and say, James. Is one not much better than the other?" "But that's like treating her as less valuable than him," Mac exclaimed. "So it is," mocked Pascal. "And she is less valuable than him." "I'm too tired, Mac. It's too hard, Mac," she mocked, matching Julie's whiny tone surprisingly well. "She is how you say, lazy bones. She needs driving all the time to get half as much work done as James." "All right," Mac agreed. "But I'm not booting her out. She couldn't make it without us. She'd starve." In that case, she should be thanking her lucky stars she lives here and showing she is grateful by working much harder, Pascal rejoined sharply. But I'm not talking about booting her out. I mean you should be looking after the best of us. Send the Julies and the Shanties out into the fields, digging and labouring until the darkness, and spare Tomo and James some of the time. Stop rescuing the lazy ones from their jobs by asking the willing ones to finish off for them. Yesterday you got Lenny to finish Julie's job and gave her an easy one instead. Lenny will one day resent being, how you say, taken for a mug. Mac's eyes opened wide. He felt cogs turning in his mind. Suppose this was an hospital, not a farm, Pascal pressed on. If you was a boss and there was a doctor and a cleaner, you wouldn't give them the same jobs, would you? Nor pay them the same? Mac sat silently, his hands steepled on the table, Pascal's words sinking in. All sorts of possibilities he'd been oblivious to opened up before him. Pascal let the lessons marinate in his mind for a goodly while before continuing. Anyway, I was speaking about rewarding our hard workers and not the lazy ones. Perhaps they will get the message and work harder. But more important, the valuable workers should feel you have rewarded and recognized them. I see, Mac said, and nodded, understanding at last. Take everyone on the trip tomorrow, even if you don't need them. Do not forget Jean and Nicolas. They need a big thank you and to be treated like special. Only leave Pet and Ashanti, Julie and Colin. What about Mandeep? Max suggested. I'm getting mixed reviews about her. You decide, Pascal said, but be careful. Some people need a boot up the backside to get them moving, but some needs the opposite, a kind word and an hug. Don't give us the wrong one.